Taking us to lands of wonder filled with imagination, today we're going to explore the excitement behind the creation of video games. I'm Noah Kittle, and welcome to My World Science. Have you ever wondered how games go from idea to completion? The process is game development, and here to help us unravel the mysteries of game development is Philippe Paquet from the Activision company who created the Call of Duty series. Welcome to KBEV Studios.
Thank you so much, Noah. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
I would like to start off with, of course, your background, because game development is a relatively new franchise, so...
A new field.
Field, yes, that's a better word.
Yes.
Field, so what brought you into it?
It's a mix of different disciplines. You mix at the same time art, like animation, graphics, and you're mixing computer science, and actually classical science as well.
Ah, okay.
So, for example, in classical science, you will have things like physics. We do physics simulation, or we simulate the way light responds to the eye.
When you were in school, did they have any kind of like computer science or maybe even game development classes, or did that come about after school passed?
That was the very beginning of computer scientist school. So there was the first classes, but the school at the time were just setting up computers, and the professors were learning how to teach computing at the time. So I did a little bit of computing at school, but I went on my own because I was passionate about that, and I learned a lot on my own, on the top of what I will learn after high school.
How long were you at Activision since starting?
I've been at Activision for nearly 5 years.
Nearly 5 years, wow. Were you at any other companies before that?
I did. I worked for the Walt Disney Company for a period of time, like nearly 7 years. And before that, I worked for the new version of Atari.
Ah, okay.
There was an original Atari company from the 1980s that went bankrupt, and it was bought by a French company called Infogrames that I was working for. So I worked with them for over 10 years before moving to the United States and working for the Walt Disney Company.
Wow, so you had a lot of background before getting into Activision. So I know that you work in the Call of Duty side of Activision, that's correct?
I do mostly work on Call of Duty. We do also have other projects. We released this year Sekiro, which was a publishing deal. So we worked with an external developer and brought their product to market. And we have other games that we are developing in-house, like Spyro the Dragon, Crash Bandicoot, and Crash Bandicoot has different facets. There's a classic platform games, but there's also the racing games, for example.
I kind of like the juxtaposition of how Activision makes, Call of Duty, and then you have Spyro and Crash Bandicoot, like they're complete polar opposites, but I guess that just shows how broad game companies can be. Activision is it conjoined with Blizzard?
Yes, it's actually part of a group, Activision, Blizzard, and King. So Blizzard Entertainment does big games like World of Warcraft or Overwatch, and we have also part of the family, King Games, which does a mobile phone game like Candy Crush.
Okay. Oh, that King, that King.
That
King.
King Games.
Ah, okay. Yes. Right. So the Call of Duty games come out about once a year?
So that's right. We have, for the last 7-10 years, been able to release a new game every year.
But of course, the production of a game does not fit into 1 year, right? So that means you would have to work on games overlapped.
Exactly. So it takes about 3 years to make a Call of Duty game. So over a period of 3 years, you will have 3 different studios that will be working in parallel to produce one game every year.
Is that 3 years including just coming up with the idea of the game, or is that 3 years after like all the designs are created? Or I guess that would be part of the 3 years?
That will be part of the 3 years. So they will do a design phase at the beginning, but our team are very experienced.
Yeah.
So when they finish a game, they usually have a good idea of where they want to go for the next game, and they know which game mechanic work, what was fun in the previous game, and what they can improve on.
Okay, very, very planned ahead, I suppose. And during the development of these games, you would, of course, need to have professionals in different fields to make sure the game itself is kind of accurate to the real world, because Call of Duty takes place in a fictitious, but it's still Earth.
Yeah, exactly. So the story is totally fictitious, but to get you to believe that you're in the real world, we need to get elements of the real world. So we need to get the geography right, we need to get the language right, and even the culture. The ambience of certain environments have to match reality to create illusion and to be able to, for you to suspend disbelief and be immersed in the action of the story.
Right. So yeah, you would need culture professionals, probably
Exactly.
Historians?
We do use historians, we do use consultants that are specialists of their different cultures to make things accurate. We worked on the geography of things. So it's a whole number of disciplines that the design team and the art team will be able to work with and get knowledge from.
And of course, Call of Duty is very physics-based, I would say, just because there's projectiles flying everywhere. And that means you would have to have a physics, maybe not a physics department, but you would probably have like a team of physicists to check everything is correct.
We do have a team that is specialized in physics.
Ah, okay.
So they do both computer science and physics. So they know enough of Newtonian physics to be able to create a simulation and write a code that will make that simulation work.
Right, because the simulations have to run in real time, that's correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, you can't just run the simulation once and then copy it everywhere. Everything has to smoothly blend together in the chaos, I guess, of the game, right?
That's right. For certain game, if you have a very fixed path, you can pre-compute a lot of things. But a game like Call of Duty, where you have a lot of freedom, you cannot pre-compute anything. So you will have to run the physics simulation in real time. You will have to run the rendering in real time, the artificial intelligence for your adversary in real time, and even the sound mixing is done in real time. So the audio will change depending on the action and depending on what you're doing.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, the sound. I forgot that sound is also physics fundamentally, and how. Yeah. Okay.
The sound is a very important component of games that is about fighting at a large scale, because the sounds can tell you where your enemies are. So that component has a simulation that is accurate. So you will be able to hear an enemy coming from where they're coming from. Plus there's a general ambience, depending on the type of room that you're in, or if you're outdoor, there may be less echo, depending on the materials around you.
And would you need someone who kind of knows what sounds animals make at all? Because you were just saying about if you were in a forest, I mean, would they put the time in to put the sounds of like creatures, or is it kind of just like a war zone?
Of course, we have sound engineers that are very similar to what the movie industry does.
That's pretty cool.
So they would go and record sounds in different places to have accuracy. So for a game like Call of Duty, we will have our sound engineer go to the range and record actual guns to know what they sound like.
Yes.
And to be able to provide accurate sound depiction in the game.
Yes. And another part that has to be simulated properly is, I think I have a better picture, is of course the explosions. I mean, because an explosion is a shockwave, which can also produce, well, a shockwave sound. It emits light everywhere, emits particles everywhere. Is there like an entire team just for explosions? Or?
There are people specialized in special effects.
Wow. Okay.
So we do have certain programmers that will work on the tool and on the engine component to do a special effect like explosion. And you will have certain artists that are specialized in producing the visual of those special effects. So we will build tool to give to the artist, and the artist will be able to tweak how they want the depiction to be. And from there, the game will simulate that in real time.
Wow, yes. Let's see, I think I also have exactly. I have a picture of a tank that you have on the website. And I brought it up because it's probably a lot harder to get information about tanks just because, like, I'm sure there's more gun ranges than tank ranges. So that means you would probably have to have quite a few military professionals in the production of the game, and I guess also for the coordination of the movement of the characters.
We do consult with a military professional. So we will have consultants coming that are ex-military special forces that will explain how they will actually move on the ground, and that way we can model the story of the game and the movement of the character in the game to something that is realistic.
One thing that just came to my mind actually is, would you have specialists who know how the human body works to simulate properly the effects of getting shot in certain places?
It's a bit more complicated than that. So when you're getting shot, what we are doing is called a ragdoll simulation.
Yes.
So we will have a physical simulation linked to a model of a body that's in physics that will replicate the impact of a bullet, for example. Mm-hmm. We may have our artist go to a motion capture set and simulate some impact, like they would use a rope or push someone and capture the motion of that person falling, for example. So, and they will later use a blend of the physics simulation we provide and their capture plus their artistic sense to produce a mix of all of that for something that look realistic, but that is cinematic at the same time.
Yeah, cinematic, because like you even mentioned earlier, how you have teams that movie makers also have.
Of course.
The video game industry has gotten so good at simulating what life looks like that now you have to actually almost treat it like a movie in some ways, making it look good from all angles. And the video game industry, of course, is larger than the movie industry at this point. That's correct.
Yeah, at this point, if you look at the global revenue, the video game industry is larger than the movie industry, the video, TV, the music, and the sports together.
Wow.
So we have very large global audience that no other media is able to reach.
I'm curious now, because I thought about globalization. I realized that these games can be basically administered anyway with internet connection. That got me thinking about the internet. So, are you ever involved with having to figure out any errors, or not errors, but any problems that might arise with having to deal with the internet connections of the servers? Can you tell us about that?
Yes. No, when you work on a game on the global scale, you have certain particular problems that make you take account of things like geography and even geopolitics.
Oh.
So we have servers all over the world for our players to play together. And when we match players together, we need to have a set of criteria. So the geography is one of the criteria. So which the place you are living in, where your internet connection is one of the criteria. But you also have to take in account geopolitics. So in the Middle East, you could have countries that are next to each other, but that don't have direct internet connection.
Oh.
So if we wanted to connect players that are very close in terms of geography, their internet connection would go, for example, through Europe or through India.
Okay.
So we have to know the internet on a large scale. We have to work with certain internet providers to make sure that the traffic for our game is flowing properly. And we have to account about a lot of little information, like how countries are interconnected with each other, because our players are there, which language our players are using. So you could be close to someone in another country in terms of geography, but if you both are speaking different language, maybe you're not a good match to play together.
Right, yeah, that can be an error. Especially, now I just realized, Europe is pretty compact in its countries and also has different languages across each country, which means that you probably, do you have a translation system in the game, or no?
We don't.
We don't. Yeah. Okay.
We don't. It's a very hard problem that technology companies are just working.
Still trying to work out, yeah.
But we do work with linguists.
Oh.
Our game is translated in, I think, 43 languages.
43.
So we have to take in account all those different languages, and not all of them, for example, are written from left to right. Some of them, like Hebrew or Arabic, will be from right to left. So when you write code for the user interface, you have to take in account all the cultural differences in terms of languages, and be ready to like provide something that works for everybody.
Let's see. So you've but you've worked in Activision for almost 5 years now, which means you've certainly worked on more than one game.
I did.
And I was wondering if there's any really unique stories that you actually have from working there, like if there was some kind of error that a lot of you had to figure out how to solve and then finally somebody did, or just some kind of monumental moment.
We do have moments every year. A game like Call of Duty is a very complex piece of technology with a lot of moving parts. You have a lot of art assets, a gigantic art team that is producing that, animators, artists, you have the sound team, you have the design team, and you have a lot of programmers as well. And that's all of those people working together and trying to get the best game to go out at a certain date. It's really, really hard, especially when you have a lot of content. So in Call of Duty, you have usually a campaign mode, which could be a game on its own, and there's a zombie game, which could be a game on its own, and then we have multiplayer. And last year we introduced a game mode called Warzone, which is like a very large map multiplayer mode. So every time you're introducing something as big as that, it's a lot of additional work. And it's not like traditional software development, where you know exactly what your finished product will be. For game development, it needs to be fun. So you're going to try something, and maybe it's not fun, and you have to change it.
Yeah.
And you have to tweak it. And even after you launch, you're going to have to make modification so everything works smoothly. It's millions of lines of code. So there's a lot of problems. And you can have problems just on the internet as well. So every launch is challenging.
Yeah, wow. That just shows how how much really needs to go into these video games, because in the past, and like mobile games too, in the past games used to be way simpler, just because the technology that we had available was also simpler, so there actually weren't as many options that we could do with it. But now, there's basically an infinite amount of options we have possible, and so the bar for excellence is raised much higher. And I guess that's kind of the importance of having gigantic teams, having gigantic budgets, because if you don't have those kind of teams and budgets, then the game's not even going to be popular in the first place.
Well, you could do some simplistic game.
You are right.
Not on
right, because indie games.
Not on console. So there's an indie game scene that is very vibrant, and it's possible to do things simplistic on mobile phone, for example. But if you're going on a video game console, like the one from Sony or Microsoft, the competition is really hard. So the amount you have to create, the world you have to create, are very, very complex.
Mm-hmm.
So you're right on that.
Yes.
Ask how to get started, like for your fellow classmates.
Okay.
Like if who have interest in video game development, what should they study? What's a good path to get started?
That of course would get cut out, but you know. Okay. Yeah. Now, what would somebody have to do to get started in game development? Because now that it's progressed to a point, it can certainly be more difficult than it was 20 years ago.
Of course, so there is multiple paths. You can start learning on your own. There are resources on the internet. There's a lot of game engine you can get for free and work with. But there's also a university program. Like there are local university in the Los Angeles area, like USC, that has a game development program that will teach you how to make a game more in details. And you will be able to work with a group of people to do that.
Wow.
So we have a few people coming from that kind of background. But the common thing is the passion. If you want to do it, if you're really passionate about that, that makes a big difference.
Yes, passion. Passion is extremely important for everything, and games no different. In fact, probably especially. Wow, because there's probably a ton of competition in terms of the passion department. Wow.
And you have to be passionate in multiple directions. You have to be passionate about the game,
yes,
but you also have to be passionate about the exact disciplines that you're going to work on.
Mm-hmm.
Are you passionate about games and art as well, or animation, or sound design, or programming?
Right, yeah.
Or even physics.
Saying games is basically kind of like an umbrella where everything underneath, there's actually many different subdivisions, and specializing in those subdivisions can actually bring you into game development.
Exactly.
Tiny side note, that's why I like USC. Because the USC game development is sectioned as art as well as computer science, so that way those who do not really know coding much can still participate in game design, because designing is kind of the art component and then coding is the building component.
Exactly. But even when you're coding, there's many ways to do things. So yes, if you have an artistic interest, it helps. It helps in terms of creativity. It's problem solving, and you can have creative solutions.
Mm-hmm.
So having interest in more than just the art science is a plus if you're going to the video game industry.
I just want to say thank you, Philip, for coming here today. That was so cool having somebody from such a large video game company actually speak here, because I'm sure tons of people would love to hear what you have to say. And probably the other hundreds that you work with as well.
I'm very lucky. I work with a lot of very talented people.
Yes. Thank you for joining us today on My World Science. If you wish to see more of our content, subscribe to YouTube and check us out on Twitter and Instagram @MyWorldScience. Until next time, think inquisitively.